And I always look at, you always want to think everything happening to me is the worst thing that could ever happen. Oh my God, why me, why me? All you have to do is look around and you see someone with a case way worse than you, and you get that perspective. And again, if you, like Tom said, never give the bastards a minute's peace. I fought the system. I had a district attorney that originally at my arraignment never showed up. So they mentioned, it's in there, it's in the book, but he never showed up. He abandoned me. And when I was in that courtroom, it was light. The judge was being real nice. I mean, the woman that got called before me, she had a little baby. She'd been charged with speeding. They handled everything in that courtroom. And this judge had her, you have to walk by and you have to stand in front of the judge's bench, and they read the charges as you're walking down to expedite it. And so this woman walks down, a young woman, and the judge calls her in closer. He goes, come here, come closer. And he touches the little baby's chin. He goes, what's the baby's name? And the baby's like, and so the judge looks at her and says, anybody with such an adorable child couldn't possibly be a speeder. Dismissed. And everybody in the room is laughing, and there's this lightness, and I'm feeling, oh, my asinine public defender's not here, but this guy's going to be okay. So they call my name. I'm in the back of the courtroom. Uh-huh. And I start walking down there reading the charges. You would have thought it was Lee Harvey Oswald coming down the aisle. You could hear a pin drop. All of a sudden, they're looking at me like I'm the worst person. I may as well peed on the flag, and
So the mood changed.
It was like radically different. So the judge said, "How do you plead?" I say, "Your Honor, my public defender isn't here yet." Judge didn't hear it, didn't care. He says, "How do you plead?" Louder voice, meaner. And then I realized, so this is how it's going to be. So I said, "Not guilty," like really with force.
With defiance.
Yeah. And so they set a trial for me. That's when I went back to USC and UCLA, and I got the name of the speechwriter for Angela Davis. He wasn't a lawyer, however, he was connected to the anti-war movement. So that began, but it was this. I'm going to never give the bastards a minute's peace. If I'm going down, I'm going to go down fighting. And that's, a lot of people, if you pled guilty, they may only give you 6 months in jail. But once you're in jail, and being in a cage like an animal is a very disgusting feeling. My friend Maddie was worried about me because he knew how outgoing I am and how I'm used to movement, and he knew being confined in a jail, he thought I would lose my mind. I wouldn't have. I was actually doing push-ups and trying to find positive energy while I waited for him to come and bail me out. It was only a matter of hours that I had a taste of it, and it was a disgusting feeling. I never forgot it, and it was a darkness that I never forgot. And turns out, I didn't say it in the story, and this is a little backstory. I was in the LA County Jail the same week as Charles Manson was when he first got arrested.
So you could have run into one another, or?
No, you couldn't. You're in a cage. I'm just saying we were in the same building.
Same building, but not the same
week.
Cell.
No, God, no.
Okay.
No. I mean, I didn't realize that until I was writing the story, and I just started. I went back and read Helter Skelter, and I looked. Holy crap! That was the same. And the other crazy coincidence, Susan Atkins was one of his family members. Do you remember that name?
No.
Susan Atkins was one of the girls that...
Did she go to the trial when he was being...
Oh, she was one of the people that went to jail.
Did she shave her head like the others?
Yeah, they all did. Put the cross.
The cross, yeah.
She was born the exact month, day, and year as me.
Ooh.
A little weird.
Yeah.
And another, I'm just going to get over this and we could move on, but when I went to San Francisco, we got there on October 21st, 1969. We hitchhiked up the coast. It was an amazing hitchhiking trip. Seeing a whale for the first time, seeing silhouettes of sequoias and redwoods in the moonlight going past Big Sur. We got to probably about 11 o'clock at night on October 21st, 1969. I write about San Francisco. Two things. The hippie movement, the love power movement in the 60s, but prior to that, you had the Beat Generation. That was their Western outpost. Jack Kerouac, who inspired a lot of people to get in their cars and ride, and we had seen a lot of those writers. Ironically, we got to San Francisco on October 21st, 1969. It was the same day, but in Tampa, where Jack Kerouac died at 47 years old. So another symbolic kind of thing. There, I find that, there's all these little connections to things. And, my brain starts going and, all of a sudden I think, wow, there's something karmic about this whole thing. I was such a fan of the Beat poets. I taught at UB, and Robert Creeley, I used to talk with him, and some great poets came through town, and I went to a lot of readings where there were a couple thousand people jammed in to see a reading. Did you ever go to one of those?
I went to see Ginsberg when he was in the Rathskeller.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then Denise Levertov. I saw her in 1978, December 78. She was at the Allentown Community Center. And it was a real warm December, and it was raining. And there's no air conditioning in it. And they had the windows. It was an old church converted. It's now something else, Allentown Industries or something. Anyway, the windows were open, and she was reading. She's just a really amazing reader. And she was reading a poem about the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima.
Which yesterday was the anniversary, yeah.
75th or 77th, whatever. Yeah. So it was, she was reading, when she was reading that poem, the windows of the church, the center, was opened because it was raining and warm, and you could hear the rain, but I could hear a prop plane flying by. And afterwards I met her. I said, were you aware? I said, nobody else, everybody was so focused on it, they didn't hear that. And I said, that was like, she's reading the poem about that, and you're hearing prop plane, which is what dropped the bomb.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was like such an amazing identification, and I said, that was so amazing. That poem was so incredible. I have somewhere, I have to check, because I've moved a few times. I taped her. But I just remember that great voice. Oh, what a great reader. I mean, and that's the thing about words. That's the thing I miss most in contemporary culture. There's so little of the joy of language like we used to revel in. The poetry readings. I mean, there are pockets of it. And usually it's kids that have to do it because they're taking a course. They're forced to go to these things. Language and words, the importance of words. I mean, I still have my book collection. I have like 3,000 books. I have a large collection at my house, and I have an apartment building in Allentown, or near Allentown, just north of Allentown. I have an apartment building where I have more books stored. But I have a lot of books, a lot of things signed. I have something signed by Robert Graves, first edition, American edition of White Goddess, which was a theoretical thing that he wrote. It was published in May of 1948, same month I was born. And it's this his theory of the influence of the moon, that's the White Goddess, on poets and romance and mankind. And I mean, really interesting guy. And I got to work at his house, work with his widow. I feel so lucky. I tell people all the time, it was like, this is so amazing, and it was because of education. That's why I go back to that grammar school every year for a period of time, every year, 100 days usually, to tell these kids about the world they could have, the doors of opportunity they could have if they, learn more, read more, do better in school, try, don't think of it as a waste of time. get off your computer for a while, you know. And it's just, I show them pictures, I tell them stories, I share this stuff because that happened for me. And I had great teachers at every school. There isn't a school that I went to that I wasn't touched by some teachers' thoughts. Even like Annabelle Lee. I was 13 in 8th grade. I never forgot that. That was such an awakening for me. That's why when I was with Marilyn, I knew I wanted that love, and she was that love, and I never lost it. Even my wife, my ex-wife, I call her my wife because tomorrow night we're going to Torn Space at Silo City. We do stuff. We go to jazz things. We go to. She's really creative in a lot of ways. She's just terrible with money, but she's a real creative source. She's, but her background, her family. That's kind of messed her up in a way. But
she's still dealing with that?
No.
Oh.
No.
She overcame it?
Oh, God, yeah. She doesn't smoke. She's in AA. She's really, and every job she works, she's probably too good because she's way more creative than anybody she ever works for. She's represented companies from all over Europe. She worked selling to museums all over the country. But they always took advantage of her, and she always ended up short because she just didn't know how to sell herself or get compensated for her effort, and people took advantage of that. And so anyway, she's just she's the one that got me to go to Mallorca in 1998.
So she's encouraged you?
Oh, God, yeah. She was the one that got me to go. She gave it to me as a birthday gift. My 50th. And as soon as I went there, I knew Alistair Reed, the writer. He was a writer for the New Yorker. And I met him at a Robert Graves thing back in the 80s. And I contacted him. I said I wanted an introduction so I could go meet Mrs. Graves. He says, you won't need an introduction. Once she knows what you did, you will be in. So he gave me her phone number. I went to visit her. And it was like unbelievable because I had read so much about Robert in Mallorca and met people that had visited him in Mallorca, some writers and other people. And I had seen pictures of his villa in Architectural Digest. And I went there and it was like, and Mrs. Graves was waiting up at the top of the driveway. And I walked up the driveway and she had a cardigan sweater on like my mother would have, with the tissue in the pockets and in the sleeve. And she had her scraggly dog and a cat on a little wall by their terrace. And so I pulled into the driveway in my rented car and started walking up. And in her English accent, she looked at me and she said, "Did you have a nice trip?" Really? And and immediately we just started talking. I didn't know how long this was going to last. I had not touched Robert Graves' material in a dozen years. So I didn't know where it was going to go. And we just started talking, and one by one, her sons came to meet me to make sure I wasn't some maniac from America. We have a few in America, so they had to check me out. When Juin came, I had to sit down. He was a spitting image of his father. I took a picture of him holding a book of poetry. With the cover was a painting of his father. I had him hold the book with the picture next to him because he looked dead ringer. And then I opened the book to a poem that his father had dedicated to him. And then we became friends. And that little first conversation lasted 7 hours. We just kept going. Then she was looking for certain poems that Robert had mentioned when he was alive prior to 1985. Well, I had copies from when I was working at the Poetry Rare Book section. It was just incredible how well and then the last time I worked with her was 2002. I was having a rough time, my marriage, my wife wanted out. I was in this,
Did you see that coming?
What? Oh, I was working a job where I was working 55 hours a week. I had the apartment building to take care of. Things were terrible with my wife. I could not She was drinking. It was horrible. And I would go to Mallorca, and it was like, it was like sanctuary.
It was a relief from the stress?
Oh, God, yeah. So I was working, she let me work on Robert's desk. And I was working on an idea. It's a collection of poems that I thought about doing. And I'll never forget this. Oh, and the other thing was my mother had just died 11 months earlier. It was a real devastating loss for me because my mother and I were real close. That's what she's mentioned in the first book. She's a hero, one of the heroes in that first book.
Did your mother die suddenly, or was it after a long illness?
She had aortal surgery. She was recovering great, and then she died. It was horrible. The ending was like so unexpected. And so my mother's died. My marriage is on the rocks. Work is terrible. These people are rotten people. They don't care about customers. I do. They don't. So I'm working there, and I'm feeling so peaceful. And coming from that triple storm in America, and I'm sitting working on this idea, and Mrs. Graves was working on something in her office, and she comes over, and she says to me, "When are you coming back?" And every year in October, I would go. So I said, "Well, next October." She goes, "I hope I can be here for you." She was 86 at the time. Then she said something that, when you're in the pits, sometimes people say the right thing. She said, "I love having you working here with me. You're like one of the family." That was just like, if those words were maybe the best words I heard in the whole decade. That lifted me up because it just, she was someone I respected, someone that I felt really close. I've had these maternal people in my life. I've been lucky. Julia Pardee at UB, just, my mother was fantastic. Beryl Graves, oh my God. That was just such a great balm for my spirit. It just healed me. And so after she said that, and I came back to America, I started to worry about her. There was a heat wave in Europe the following year in 2003. Terrible heat wave. People were dying, because they don't have air conditioners like in America. People were dying a lot, especially elderly people. So I would call her every month just to talk, say hi, how you doing? And then I hadn't planned yet to go. I was going to go in October like I always did. Well, I called her in July, on a July day. I heard it was really hot. And her housekeeper answered the phone. And she didn't speak a lot of English. She spoke broken English. She was from Eastern Europe. And I said, "Oh, hello, forget what her name is." I said, "Is this Beryl there?" She goes, asleep. And this was at a time, noon their time. So she's asleep at noon. That made me...
Was that a red flag?
Oh, yeah. So I called Lucia in London. I said, "Lucia, your mother is still sleeping. I'm a little concerned." And sure enough, Lucia called her mother, suspected something, and flew down to Mallorca. It's like a 2-hour flight from London. It's not crazy. Well, because of that, I said, "I'm going early. I'm going in August this time. I'm not waiting." That's the worst time to go to Europe. All the tourists are there. Everybody's on vacation.
August is bad or October's bad?
No, October's great. August is bad. Second week of July, really, to the Labor Day is like everything's at the max. Traffic, people, restaurants are, it's the worst. Well, I didn't care. I was going to go. So I stayed nearby, and Lucia had the guest house. They have the main house, beautiful, overlooking the sea. And Lucia has the guest house, and she had a pool in behind her place that she had installed. Well, I went there, and I used to bring maple syrup, which they don't have over there. And I also would get maple chocolate from Canada, maple chocolate. And when I would go over there, I would make French toast with real maple syrup, which is incredible. Maple syrup is just the best, real maple syrup. So Lucia, I would do that every year when I was with Beryl. Lucia goes, I always make French toast. She goes, what's that? French toast. I don't know what that is. I said, well, it's not really French. It's not really toast. And I would make it, and then I would cut it, and people would eat it like a dessert. And the maple chocolates, they loved it. And then we would swim in the pool. Well, Beryl had lost weight. I noticed that, and she was a lot slower. She had slowed down. She was 88. And then we ended up having a great visit. I come home, and a few weeks later, there was a full moon out. She was also connected to Robert's theory about the moon, looking at the moon, and especially when it was full and beautiful. And she went to go outside from the back of her house or villa, and she stumbled and broke her hip. Had to be rushed to the hospital in Palma de Mallorca, and she ended up dying. And they don't have wakes like here. They bury one day. And Lucia sent me pictures of the service, and and that was that. So I got to see her one more time. And then the house was sold, and when they opened the museum, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Michael Douglas, who have an estate there, were at this opening, and it was all over, and I got to be part of that. It was really great. I mean, just like I said.
Oh, you went to the opening of the museum?
Oh, yeah. And it just, I keep thinking to myself, kid growing up on Trenton Avenue, holes in my pants, making up games on the street, and through education and these contacts and this, curiosity, I'm around writers. They had a conference in 2006 when they opened the museum, and there were people from all over the world, and it was in Palma de Mallorca, which is about 35 miles. It's down by the sea. And then they had a bus tour. They had all of us get in a bus to go up to Dea, which is on the northwest corner in the village of Dea. Very winding, narrow roads, really beautiful cypress trees. If you were an artist, you would never run out of material to paint. It is so, I have literally hundreds of pictures, and I've got them framed all over. Beautiful. It's like magical. And then when you think of all the great people that went there, and I mean, I just feel so connected when I go there. Well, the bus, they had this intellectual thing, people were doing papers and having discussions about Robert Graves and his importance and blah, blah, blah. Well, they had a day where we went by bus up to Dea, and we were to meet in the town square. The mayor of Dea, a small village, would meet us, and then there was a dinner for us. There was another evening in Palma. There's a castle overlooking Palma. One night we had a party in this castle overlooking the city and the sea, and they had a string instrument. It was amazing, beautiful. Alistair Reid was there, this great writer. So anyway, we go into Palma. Now I'm coming from a crazy job where I'm literally in a pressure cooker working, and that day I get in my car, I drive to Toronto, I fly overnight, and within 24 hours I go from insane advertising job to placid intellectual environment. And so I was only an audience member. I actually recorded stuff that was going on. Well, we get into the village. The roads are so narrow they can only drive one way. You can't go back the same way because you have to go through another town. We get to the town, and I'm talking to people in the audience in Palma for this intellectual conference, the Gravesiana conference. And so when we get to this town and we get off the bus, Robert Graves's descendants, his children, grandchildren, relatives related, are waiting to greet the busload of people from Gravesiana. I get off the bus. All of a sudden, everybody swarms around me, and they're hugging and kissing me. And these people are, who the hell is this guy? He was, because they had no idea what my connection was to, most of them had never been there. Well, I had been there numerous times, and I, became part of the family in a sense. And it was just so funny because they couldn't believe that, you know, I was given such attention. And we went down to the Cala Dea, which is a cove. Beautiful place. And I was trying to get people, because this is what Robert Graves every day he used to own the land from his villa all the way to the sea. Eventually he sold off a lot of it. But he used to walk down to the sea and have a swim, go back up to the house and write. That was his routine. Well, there was a boulder in the Cala offshore. It's about 10 feet, maybe 11 feet, I don't know. And William wrote about seeing that in he wrote a book about his autobiography about when he went to Mallorca and his life there. And he described that in the book. Well, Robert used to dive off of it. So I tried to get some of these other people, because you have to climb up, it's craggly, and it's a little bit of a job getting to the top and dive into water, and the water's not deep. It's only like 40.
So it's dangerous.
Well, you have to dive out. You can't dive like this, because you'll land on the rocks underneath. So I was trying to get these people to do it. Nobody would do it, and I had to do it. And it was a rough day. The water was really rough, and I couldn't see the bottom, so I really had to dive out like that. So almost like a belly flop. Well, one of the guys, Rab, who was a student of Robert Graves in the early 60s and teaches English literature in Warsaw, at the University of Warsaw, he took a picture of me, and he sent it to me. I have it. It's really a cool picture. He sent it. I love the way he said it. He says, "I have a lovely picture of you in mid-flight." And you see me diving off the rocks. But, you meet these people, and it's just, I have to go back to that amazement. I have a brother that was involved in drug stuff, went to jail, married twice, 6 kids by 5 women. Just high school dropout, functionally illiterate, can't read. He chose a completely different path, diametrically opposite.
Do you ever reflect on you could have taken the same path?
No, I couldn't have. Never. Well, no, because I loved learning. When I was at PS1 on the west side, it's gone now. It was in the 1950s, and the teachers in the 1950s, Europe was a cheap adventure. They'd go over for a month, 5-6 weeks, rent a car or take the Eurail all over the place, and they would come back with pictures. And they used to take slides. Remember slides? Well, somebody at that PS1 decided to put a program together. They had so many teachers that had gone over and they had pictures, so they would narrate their pictures. And that's where I got the idea of maybe seeing Europe. And I've been there like 23 times. I've got friends in Paris. Do you know Pierre Ben-Suzanne? Do you ever hear of him?
No.
Check him out sometime. Great guitar player, sings in French. We became friends years ago. I did some pictures of him. He invited me to Paris. I stayed at his villa with him and his wife and son, and we became friends. And I've traveled different places to see him in Boston, in Toronto. He was here last year at Birchfield. He's been there the last 2 times. I saw him in Toronto on a Sunday, and then 3 days later he was at the Birchfield.
Did you go see him there?
Oh yeah. I took a whole group of people, and I did a collage of black and white pictures I had taken of him in concert years ago, and I made a collection. I gave everybody a folder, and after the concert, Pierre, B-E-N.
Yeah, I found it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's got his own website.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. He's a genius. In fact, he just emailed me about a week ago.
Yeah, he's on a world tour.
Always. Well, we were going back.
He plays classical guitar?
He plays. It's hard to call it. The generic name is New Age.